nothing prepared. Jack said, would you like
I'm
to
clobbering.
So, yeah, I was lucky enough to work with Jerry on Telehawks back in the 80s, and I also was the creator and co-writer of Dick Spanner, which is one of Jerry's unusual productions, and it was of its time. I will say that it was of its time. How many are you all local people? Yes. Okay. No, not all. Okay, fair enough. Anyone here from the Bristol Estate? Good. Okay. All right. I'm on my own. Okay. I grew up on the Bristol Estate, which obviously is just a stone's throw from Stirling Avenue. So as a child, I knew all about Thunderbirds because it was all around school. And I remember one day at school, I was always late. I went to Clayton's, I was always late. And I went there one day and they said, Terry, I'm really sorry you've missed it, but Captain Scarlet and the Angels come to our school and gave us all these leaflets. And I thought, yeah, this is a bit of a wind-up. You know, I was very young at the time, a bit of a wind-up, and I thought, knowing some of my mates, they've been to Stirling Avenue and they nicked stuff. But it wasn't until about 50 years later that I found out it did actually happen. They did the mini moke and people dressed up and they went around schools dropping the things off, so that was very much my involvement. So as I say, I knew about Thunderbirds, I knew about everything that was going on. I always wanted to work in the film business. That was my big thing. I remember I was at a school called Walmfield, which is now Beechwood, and I remember saying to my careers master, he said, what do you want to do when you leave school? I said, I want to work in the film business. That's all I want to do, work in the film business. And he turned around to me and said, people like you, from council estates like this, and schools like this, do not get into the film industry. How do you fancy being a hairdresser? So I left him, lying there, and it really sort of gave me the passion to sort of think, well, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. Now, in those days, there was no internet, there was no Googling things. So during my summer holidays, I used to cycle up to Pinewood Studios and sit outside and hope someone would invite me in, just to look around. That's all I wanted to do. But it never ever happened. Then in 1977, Pinewood had their first and only ever open day. They opened the studio to the public for two days over a weekend. They didn't know how popular it was going to be. If any of you know the sort of area around Pinewood, all the car parks were forward of Pinewood, and they were parking up the road towards the Crooked Billy. Just so many people. It's a fantastic day. We recently found a video of it when it was all happening, and you know, it was a Superman was being done there. The Bond stage was open to the public, and you thought you was all going to see the submarines from Spy Who Loved Me, but it was just an empty thing. But at least you got it. But what they also did, they had a lot of production companies dotted around, and I went into one production company called Westbury Design and Optical, which was run by a lovely guy called Cliff Cully, who was one of our top matte artists. Now, this was days before CGI. I don't know how many of you know what a matte painting is, but this was where, for example, you wanted a castle on top of a hill. You would go out and photograph the hill, and then you'll come back to experts like Cliff and that, and they would paint on glass the castle, and then that would be superimposed on the film. So that was very much matte painting. And I remember I'd spoken to Cliff, and he said, what do you want to do? I said, well, I want to work in the film business. He said, what are you doing now? And I said, well, because I was always interested in art department, I took art at A level, and I managed to get myself into Berkshire College of Art and Design, based in Maidenhead and Reading. And I got myself on a foundation architecture course through design. And I said to him, I was just about to start college. And he said, right, okay. He said, look, go to college and give me a call during your first summer holidays. And he said, if we've got anything, I'll let you know. So I took that as a don't call us, we call you. So I remember coming towards the end of my summer holidays, my mum said, Terry, have you run Cliff? I said, no, Mum. I said, he was just, fading me off, so I didn't keep bothering him. So I said, all right. So I come home that day, she said, I've phoned Cliff. She said, he wants to see you tomorrow. So I went to see Cliff, and he said, look, he said, do you want to, nothing planned, do you want to come and work with me during the summer holidays? So I said, yeah, obviously. And then I went and worked with Cliff for about 6 weeks on films like Arabian Adventure, and there was no one called King Arthur and the Spaceman. Now, at the end of that 6 weeks, sorry if I'm sending you to sleep, it's a long story, I will get to Jerry. And he said, right, it's time for you to go back to college. And he said, I've got 2 options for you. Now, before this, back in the early 70s, late 70s, the film industry, especially in the UK, was very union-led. Very union-led. And the only way you could work in the film industry was to have an ACC ticket. And the only way you could get an ACT ticket was to work in the film industry. It was a real catch-22. Real catch-22. So Cliff said to me, he said, look, he said, I've got 2 offers for you. He said, I think you should take the first one. He said, go back to college, get your degree, and we'll keep in touch. He said, or you can stay on with me. I can't guarantee how long it'll be. It might be 9 days, it might be 9 months. He said, I really don't know. He said, but I will get you your ticket, which is at least a good chance. So I went away and I spent 3, 4, 5 seconds thinking about it and come straight back and said, yeah, I'll give up college because that's all I ever wanted to do. Sometimes I regret it, sometimes I don't. But I was in the film business and I was working with Cliff. And the thing about this game is about networking. It's not what you know, it's who you know. So I was, from all those days, from cycling up to Pinewood, I was now driving and working there. It was a dream come true. Absolutely fantastic. But the nature of the business, especially in those sort of years, it wasn't as busy as it is now. And I worked for Cliff on a few films. I always tell a story. One of my jobs as a trainee, you see the end credits. He used to do the end credits for a lot of Disney films. And at this day and age, you just did and it comes up. There, it had a big glass sheet. And does anyone remember Letraset? Rub down letters. Yeah. So you put these on, and my job was to paint the drop shadow on them. Oh, right. So that was But I had a great time with Cliff, and then obviously there was time when we were out of work. I've been a lot of temping on the Slough trading estate and places like that. Oh, come back soon. And what happened is my uncle had a friend who lived on the Borough as well, and he said, look, my nephew's just got in the film business. So he's looking for work. And he said, okay, he said, he was a carpenter. He said, we're looking for trainees. He said, I can't promise anything. He said, send him around. So I went round to see Bob, who was a carpenter, and he said, I'm starting on a film and we're looking for trainees. And he said, it's just basically helping out. And it was in the special effects department. And I said to him, so what's the film? He said, well, I don't know. He said, I'm just a carpenter. All right. Do you know anything about it? He said, no. Biblical, something to do with the Bible. I said, do you know who's directing it? He said, I'm not a carpenter, I don't know these things. It's like Stephen Slough something. Now, I was a big film buff, and still am. And I said, is it Steven Spielberg? I said, probably. I said, yeah, I'll grab this job. And he took me on as a trainee, and just so happens that I wasn't wearing this on purpose, but I ended up working on Raiders of the Lost Ark, my first ever job. And I had a fantastic time. Spent 2 months in Tunisia, working with the special effects things, working over L Street, worked with a special effects guy called Kit West, who got an Oscar for the work on that. and it was just fantastic. You know, I was almost on every set at Elstree. I got bitten by snakes and just had a fantastic time. Harrison Ford bought me a drink when we was in Tunisia, so absolutely fantastic. So that went on, and then that finished, and I went back and did a little bit of work for Cliff. Then I got a call from Kit again saying, I'm working on another new film, would you like to come on and just be a trainee again? It was literally going to get the sandwiches, the coffee, and helping out. And yeah, I said, yeah, love to. I said, what's this film? And he knew lots more about it, and that's how I ended up working for George Lucas on Return of the Jedi. So I'd gone from Raiders to Jedi, just couldn't believe it. Absolutely fantastic. So, had a great time. Then, sort of out of work again, I was working on the trading estate, a place called Widgets, which was literally just down the road from here. And they made plastic food for films and also celery key rings, really sort of weird. And I remember the boss there said, if you'd like to stay on, he said you could become the foremost plastic chicken maker in the country. And I thought, not really what I wanted to do. But I was up a local pub and I heard someone say, Jerry Anderson is starting up a new series. And it's going to be a return to sort of puppet, and it's over at Bray Studios. All right. So I went, you know, what you do is you ring up, you make an appointment, and you go over. So I went over to Bray Studios in my lunchtime, and the security wasn't like it is at Pinewood and everywhere now. You can't even look over a fence these days. But I drove up to there was a little box that the security, just one man was on, put his newspaper down, and I said, I'll come see Jerry Anderson. He said, right. He said, you know where the office is? I said, yeah. He said, right, go on through. I didn't know where the office was. I didn't even set an appointment. I was just chancing my arm. And I actually found the office, and I went up there and I explained. I met a lovely guy called Bob Bell, who was an art director on this, and he was also a co-producer on Terror. And I went in, I said, look, I'm really sorry I'm being a bit cheeky, but I'm just wondering, are you all crewing up? Have you got anything for special effects? And he said, no, we're completely booked up on the special effects. And I said, all right, don't worry. I said, you know, he who dares wins. Don't ask, you don't get. So I was literally walking, because Jerry was away, so he wasn't there. So I was literally walking away from Bob's office, and he called out, he said, would you say you're physically fit? And I said, well, yeah, I guess I am. He said, could you lift heavy objects and things like that? I said, yeah. And he said, well, we're looking for an art department assistant to help build the sets on the puppet stage of Terrorboard. He said, would you like to? I said, yes. And literally, you know, all through my career, I've been in the creative industry for 46 years now, and it's always not saying no. If you make a mistake, you learn mistakes. But I managed to start working with on Terrorboard in about 1980 for Christmas. And I always remember the first time I ever met Jerry. I opened the door for him to get on the stage, and he said, you know, who are you? And I said, oh, I'm Terry. He said, where are you from? I said, the Brooklock. And he looked at me and he said, you want one of the so-and-sos who used to come and nick all our stuff out of the bins? No, not me. And that's fairly true. I did have some bits of film, but I always remember I got a phone call from a school friend once. He said, Terry, do you want to come round and play Thunderbirds? And I said, yeah, sure. I went round, and he had this whole lunar polystyrene scape that he said he had found outside that. So we had a little contact there. So I got on well with Jerry, started off in the art department, building sets and set dressing. And then there was a lot of change around in personnel, especially in the special effects department. Now, I believe the young guy that was running the special effects department then was Ian Begg, who popped in yesterday. And you know, he's now one of our top visual effects artists, working on the bombs and Potter and stuff like that. And they had a change round, and I got to know Steve very well in the team, because once again it was different times. Bray Studios had a bar actually in the studios, and used to go down and have a drink for lunchtime, and then go back to work. Completely different time. And then Friday nights we all used to stay and have a drink. And then sort of, when Jerry said we're looking around for someone to come into the special effects department, Steve said, I know Terry, he's doing the art department, maybe we could swap it over. So once again, I said, yeah, love to it. So I went and joined the special effects team at Studios and had a fantastic time doing all the model work. When you see the Hudson car going racing along, if you pull out, that's me on the street running down the stage to pull it along, because it wasn't remote control and stuff like that, and then helping stuff. And then one of the technicians who was doing all the explosions and was the head of the department left, and other things happened. And long story short, Joe said, well, we haven't got anyone to do the pyrotechnics. I said, you can do that, can't you? And I said, well, yeah. He said, you'll be careful, you won't blow anything up too much, will you? And you'll do all the things. And I said, yeah. And for a while, I became the youngest pyrotechnics guy in the UK. So towards the end of all the Telehawks, around about the second series, a lot of those explosions you saw were mine. And Steve always said, you know, they were as good as Derek Meggins, so that was always I wouldn't say that, but I will say that was a wonderful thing to say. But yeah, so I was just at the right place at the right time. But the thing is with Jerry, and I'm sure you've heard this story before, he always looked after young talent. If he saw you had a passion, he would really help and push you forward. And, you know, and with Jerry, you know, I did that, he got me in that, got to know him very well. We finished Hellhawks, and then he kept me on. He taught me about script writing, and also one time again he was looking for a storyboard artist because he was starting to do commercials, and he was looking for storyboard artists. And once again, good old Steve said, "Well, Terry does a bit of drawing," so he said, "We'll send him up with his portfolio." So once again, I went up, put my portfolio up, and he's flicking through it, and then he comes across this rather hastily drawn picture. And I remember drawing it on a wet Sunday afternoon. I just watched Blade Runner, the original film, and I was sitting at home doing some drawing, and I drew this cartoon of a robot detective, you know, in the trench coat and stuff like that. And he's flicking through it, he's gone, "What's this?" I said, "Well, it's one of my..." No, he said, "Tell me, who's this character?" I had no idea. It was just something that I'd done. So I really sort of went for it. I said, "Oh, it's a robot detective from a parallel universe." He said, "What's his name?" And I said, "Oh, Dick Spanner." I said, "You know, Dick as in detective, Spanner is in the toolbox." He said, "Why haven't you shown me this before?" And I said, "Well, you never really asked." I said, "So, you know, never thought anything about it." I think within 9 weeks we had a pilot show made and contract signed with Channel 4, and we made 26 5-minute episodes at Grey Studios that went out with Channel 4's first ever sort of youth programme called Network 7, and they used to show these 5-minute things. And you know, when I showed it to Joe, he said, "I'll get Tony Barwick to write it." Tony was a hero of mine because I loved all the stuff he did, and I loved things like, you know, the Persuaders, the Baron, the Saint. I always loved that. And he said, Tony said, "But I'll get you to put the jokes in." And he said, "So I'll give you co-writer." I said, "That's good." He said, "I'll also give you the credit of creator." And then all of a sudden he said, "Well, then you might as well direct it." So once again, just an opportunity out of nowhere. And as I say, Dick Spanner could never be made today. It was very much aimed at students coming home with a couple of pints on a Friday night. But it's amazing how that legacy has up. And for me, it's one of my proud moments is that still coming to things like this, that I'm still a tiny part of the Jerry Anderson legacy. I think without Jerry, I don't think I'd be where I am now. I spent 27 years at a local video company making corporate videos as a writer, director and presenter. And I now work for a company called Resource Productions in Slough, it's a charity, and we help people get into the creative industry. So it's almost like my career is coming a big circle. You know, I was the little Terry sitting outside Primary Studios on my phone, hoping someone would help me. And now it's gone round, and I'm helping people get into the creative business, not just film, just the creative industries. And people say, you know, you've worked on all these films, what is your best moment? And I said, well, they all had great moments. I said, but today, is I feel that was all like an apprenticeship to get to now. Because when people sort of come up to me and say, I got into the film industry, thanks for helping, or you've given me an opportunity to get into the film set, I know how that feels. It's gone back, 50 years I know how that feels. So for me, that is a great thing for me. And also for being a local boy, so grew up in Slough. I moved to Sippenham, and I've only literally just moved across the M4 to Etonwick. But it's so much part of my life. And also coming to things like this, Jay invites me, and Slough Museum. I'm a very lucky guy. Very, very lucky. I don't think there's a lot of talent in it, but I think I was in the right place at the right time. Jerry came to my wedding. Jamie, he went missing. He was a 4-year-old. He was out playing with some of my cousins, so I always tease him about that. But as I say, Jerry came to my wedding, and he was a real big influence on me. And as I said before, just being a tiny part of this legacy, I just feel so proud. So proud.
That is an amazing story, isn't it? It's so good. So Terry, when you got into pyrotechnics, did you have any training?
Yeah, I sort of like, there was a lot of in and outs there, and I was called up before the committee, Special Effects Committee at Pinewood, with people like John Richardson, Derek Medians and things like that, and they kept a strict eye on me all the time. And I was only doing stuff on tabletops, so it wasn't big. It was not much bigger than 2 of those tables, so I had to keep it all under control. And obviously Jerry wouldn't let me do anything that was too dangerous, so I was really proud of that sort of thing. And this was all before, once again, we're talking about 80s, where they were just starting to get traineeships in and apprenticeships in the film business. Because in those days it was very much not what you know, but who you know, and then you learn on the job. And a lot of my stuff it's been all the time, it's been learning on the job. Never went to university or anything like that. So
Fascinating. We had an interesting comment yesterday from Alan, who said that Jerry and him went into London to go and pick up some explosives.
Yeah.
And they drove around the back of Buckingham Palace with Alan carrying the explosive on his lap and thinking, you would never get away with that.
No, you wouldn't. I say it's completely different today. It's so much paper. I don't think I was invited back to when they did the new Thunderbirds, when they did it from the singles that come out. They made it over Sterling Avenue with Stephen O'Hare, and he said, would you come up and sort of do the explosions? And I said no, because I hadn't really sort of had that sort of training, and things have changed now. Yeah. So I could never do it. It was a moment in time, So and I took the opportunity. You never ever be able to do it again. So as I say, I've been very lucky. I was at that sort of stage as well within the film industry and with Jerry, where computers were starting to come in. I remember when I first started, there wasn't even the BBC computers. Everything was done by hand, and we called it belt and braces. We might have a remote control car or something, but everything else was strings and pulleys and stuff like that.
Amazing. Shall we tell the audience about what we've got planned for later this year?
Well, okay, it's all very much in the planning stage. As I say, I work for a company in Slough that promotes the arts, and what we're trying to aim to do is to celebrate the 60th year of the first ever showing of the Thunderbirds series, which was anyone? Terror in the Sky? Yeah. We're hoping to be able to show that at a location. We're also going to have a much bigger exhibition here with guest speakers. We're hoping to have a heritage walk up to Sterling Avenue and around, and also we're hoping to have a small concert by a local Slough orchestra. All very much. I don't want to give too much away, but it's all in the planning stage, and they'll say, stuff like this will be there, which I think is absolutely fantastic. The artwork is just unbelievable, so we're hoping to get more stuff, and also chat to other people. So we're aiming that. Although the exhibition will be for a few weeks, we're trying to do it all on one day, which is going to be, I think, September the 30th.
September.
30th, end of September.
So keep an eye out on social media and Facebook and that, because we'll publish the dates once we get them firmly fixed.
We're working closely with Jamie Anderson. So, we're just getting permissions, you know, it's all right, copyright and stuff like that we have to go through.
Yeah, and a lot of it's well controlled, isn't it?
Yeah,
The
very much,
copyrights and
very much
Thunderbirds.
so, very much so.
We have to be so careful what we do.
Yeah, yeah. So, but as I say, once again, you know, since I've been in this job, it's, you know, sort of Jamie says, you seem to be the man to go to about anything about Anderson. I said, it does seem the moment. And I'm so happy to chat all the time.
The other thing to look out for is the Jamie Anderson podcast, because
there's an
Terry regularly appears on it, and I think he's the guest comedian from what I see.
Yeah. What it is Jamie, Richard James, and Chris Dow. I don't know if any of those names mean anything to you. They do a weekly podcast from Moxie, and they've been doing that for now about 3 or 4 years. And because anyone who's seen Dick's Money, you know, it's just full of really awful puns. So they have a one-off each Christmas, and it's called Terry Christmas. And I go on there and just tell the most awful Jerry Anderson pun lady jokes.
I think they're the Christmas cracker jokes.
The Christmas cracker joke, yeah. So I really don't ask me to come up with anything because I think it's not anything. And once again, it's just being part of that legacy still, and sort of going to sort of conferences, and, you know, being asked to be a guest speaker at a conference or anything like that is like, wow, you know, because I used to go to those, and Derek and other people would be Derek Meddings and people would be there, and just, wow. And we're, because of Terrell, and Captain Scarlet, you know, we're all of the same age, and we're now that generation. My brother-in-law, Mark Woolard, directed a few of the last new Captain Scarlet, the CGI one, so, you know, we're very much in there. And I say, you know, Steve Potley, grown up with Steve, and things like that. So, yeah, it's an important part of my life.
Does anyone from the audience have a question for Terry? Yes, at the back there.
So after these productions for Jerry, what other films and TV shows have you worked on before you moved to?
What happened then was really after Jerry is I went into the corporate world, and very much making health and safety videos, training videos. I made over 600 different types of videos, so that kept me really, really busy. So I didn't really turn. Other films that I worked on was King Arthur Spaceman, Bear Island, Donald Sutherland film back in the day, Clash of the Titans, the original, was I was working with Cliff, where the Kraken comes out of the water and the tidal wave destroys a village, a temple. I was involved in model making on that and shooting all that. So I'm a very, very big James Bond fan, and that's still my my dream. I've never got to work on a Bond film, but that's what I'm doing.
You also need credits a little English, aren't you?
Yeah, with Resource Productions, we made a film 2 years now called Little English. It's available on streaming things, and I was, once again, I was offered, I was second assistant director on that, and so I had a speaking part. So I'm also very much involved in that, in feature films. And obviously, you know, Resource does a lot of shorts, so I get called in. I'm currently producing a project, an international project. So it's all these as I say, it's a bit of a Del Boy type thing, you know, he who dares win. When people offer me something, I say, let's have a go. And if I've learned lots of mistakes, so there's some things I do say no to, but I've always sort of said, you know, I don't want to be sitting in my rocking chair thinking, why didn't I give that a go? Why didn't I give that a go? And you know, it's been great. You know, even when I was with Croft Television doing all the videos, I spent a lot of time being a presenter as well. Once again, was into acting, so that was fabulous.
Any other questions?
Just wondered, because I come from Burnham,
Yep.
Brickwell Estate, all the kids came to our local secondary school. I just wondered which school you went to.
I went to it was called Warrenfield then. It's now called Beechwood.
Okay, yes.
They pulled it down when I left. Nothing to do with me.
No.
But and sort of flake ups on.
Well, actually, I don't come from Burnham, but that school is now closed and they're
Yes.
fighting to open
I
it.
know, yeah.
So just wondered if you might have been the next people.
No,
You see
no,
that.
no.
Okay, I can't add your name.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Good
Thank
old-
you.
good
It's
old-
great. You come from Ripwell Estate, you've made such success and saying yes to everything.
Yeah,
Obviously, you're way forward.
yeah, and still saying yes.
So it's amazing what's come out of Slough.
Yeah, and I say the thing with Resource Productions, we do champion talent in Slough, and there is so much, artistic, creative, anything from filmmaking, dancing, spoken word. I put on a showcase every year. I think this year is going to be around about 6th of December, and we generally have sort of like 8 or 10 acts will come on, all from Slough. And that could be anything from dancing, poetry, films, spoken word. And once again, it's because I'm a Slough boy. I moved to Slough when I was 3. I was born in Paddington, so not very far from here. But to be able to sort of like champion Slough in what I do, that's what I really enjoy.
It's something to be proud of.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we all owe Terry a great round of applause.
Thank you.
So enjoy the rest of the exhibition. We're open till 4 o'clock.